Okay, so trauma happens when there's big pain. But just the pain itself isn't enough to make something traumatic. We go through pain every single day. And we've done that since the time we were born. We stub our toes, we do something wrong at work, we get into a confrontation or somebody says something to us nasty at the grocery store. There's so many things that cause pain. So there's another factor that has to happen for something to become traumatic. The result is we get constricted. When we go through the pain, the way that we adapt to that pain is something that we carry on throughout the rest of our life. So we have pain, we adapt to that pain, and then this becomes the way that we deal with pain throughout the rest of our lives. The characteristic, the variable that happens that causes the constriction very frequently is that we're alone with our pain. We're alone with our pain and we don't know what to do with it. So when we're kids and a parent dies and there's nobody there to comfort us, there's nobody there to see us, there's nobody there to teach us how to identify and recognize our pain, how to process it and express it, how to comfort and soothe our pain. The way that we adapt to this loss of our parent constricts us and we act that out for the rest of our lives. For instance, if we have a parent that's sick and dying when we're kids, and we don't want to add more stress onto an already stressful time, so we make ourselves very small. We don't communicate our needs, right? We think that we're going to be a burden, or that we're not worthy of it, or that we're going to cause more stress. So we make ourselves very small. We repress our emotions. Then later on in life, when we're dealing with painful situations, we make ourselves very small. We repress our emotions. If we have abusive parents, or we're dealing with negligence, right? And we can't set boundaries, we can't go away physically, so we go away mentally. We distract ourselves. And we use the distractions as ways to suppress our emotions. This is what we're talking about when we say something is traumatic, is the way that we responded to the initial pain carries on throughout life. So we become very firm and rigid and compressed and constricted in the amount of responses that we have. This trauma, this adaptation to trauma, the making ourselves small, the repressing our emotions, most of the times the relationship that we have with this is very harsh. For me, when I think about the way that I respond to difficult situations with fear, for instance, or with anger, these are things in the past that I used to have a very difficult relationship with. But these are the things that saved me when I was going through my initial trauma. It helped me go through it. So when we look at our trauma, we want to really examine and be very curious about our relationship with the trauma. On the other hand, we want to make sure that we don't use our trauma as a crutch to get us by. So if we grew up in a family where we were invisible, and nobody ever saw us, nobody ever paid attention to us, and we desperately wanted to be seen, to be understood, and to be connected, what happens when we get sick and we develop something like a cancer? Now people see us, now people pay attention to us, and we don't want to rely on that cancer as a way to get the thing that we initially needed. So what we can do is we can start to look at where this pain originated from. We can see what was happening, what were the circumstances when this original pain originated, when it originally developed, when I first started feeling this pain. We can identify that by feeling it in the body and saying, okay, there's this tension in my chest or this pit in my gut. How long has it been there? It goes back to this time. This is where I can remember feeling it. This is the initial trauma, or this is one of the initial traumas. What did I really need during that time? Oh, I needed somebody to really see me and understand me. Okay, I need to start to figure out how to get those needs in ways that are outside of the initial adaptation to my trauma. So if I would make myself small until I got sick, and then when I got sick, I got attention, I need to figure out how to get attention without making myself small and getting sick. If I was in an abusive family growing up, and I was never able to have boundaries, I was never allowed to be an individual, I need to learn how to express boundaries in a healthy, constructive way as an adult. So if we get constricted by the trauma, and we become very stiff and rigid in our responses to things that are happening all around us, and we respond to these things the same way that we adapted to our initial trauma, well, if we're stiff and rigid, well, then we have to become more flexible. We need to become more, we need to have a bigger range of motion. And the way that we do that is we start to stretch, right? And when we start to stretch, if our bodies are very stiff and rigid, it's uncomfortable. It doesn't feel very good. The result, though, of it leads to us feeling good. So one of the key characteristics of working with trauma is cultivating the ability to sit with things that are uncomfortable. The feelings that are inside of us, the physical feelings, the tensions, the constrictions, the stress, the weight, the very, very tight, always activated emotional responses in our bodies, these are uncomfortable. And if we're going to heal them, if we're going to become more flexible in our responses, we have to be able to sit with those. So, trauma is when bad things happen that shouldn't, good things that should happen don't happen, and we're alone with it. We don't know what to do with the pain, so we adapt to it in the only ways that are available for us. This adaptation becomes a constriction, and we act this out throughout the rest of our lives. Right? So if when we're a kid, we're in an abusive family, and we check out, we go away mentally, later on in life, we can't focus. We can't be present. We can't be in this moment and engage with the things that we're dealing with. We're scattered. So we have to learn how to be present. In order to be present, we have to be willing to sit with the discomfort of these feelings that exist inside of us and the potential of more pain happening. We have to teach ourselves how to respond to pain, how to identify our emotions, how to recognize the emotions. We have to teach ourselves how to express the emotions in healthy, constructive ways. We have to teach ourselves how to process the emotions, how to comfort and soothe the emotions. And one of the most important things we have to teach ourselves how to do is how to relax, how to rest. Because for so many of us, when we go through the early trauma, when all these bad things are happening, the people who are doing it to us had the same thing happen to them. And those people who did it to our parents or our caregivers or whoever had the same things happen to them. And so for generations, these patterns have been handed down. And all throughout these patterns and these generations, we've never ever been able to just sit and be present with that pain and to relax with it and to rest with it and to engage and relate with it while relaxing with it. When we were children and we were going through this pain, we didn't need somebody who was very activated and stressed, right? Emotions bursting out the seams to come and sit with us. Most of the times, that was a characteristic of the people or person who was hurting us. What would have probably been helpful for a lot of us when we were kids going through these traumatic experiences, or even when we go through them as adults, is to have somebody who is present and emotionally attuned and mature to be there to help us regulate and ground. When we're kids, when we're children, the way that we learn how to process our emotions is what neuroscientist Dan Siegel calls interpersonal neurobiology. And what that means is that our neural circuits, our emotional circuits, as they're developing, they're downloading the information from the mature, regulated nervous system, the mature, regulated emotional system. Most of the times, that's our parents. And the way that we do that is through physical touch, through being held, right? But what happens when we have parents that are not emotionally mature or emotionally regulated or don't hold us and touch us? We never learn how to express or process our emotions. And so we have this constant anxiety, this constant nervousness, this constant threat, this constant panic that's there, that's telling us we need to be held, we need to be comforted, that we didn't get when we were younger. So we have to learn how to cultivate that now. And to do that, we have to learn to sit with discomfort, to teach ourselves how to rest and relax. The way we start doing that is by identifying our emotions, recognizing what I'm feeling, recognizing the tensions, the feelings in the body, identifying our beliefs, the mental stories, the narratives that we tell ourselves about the things that are happening. Then we have to learn how to process them, express them, and soothe them. And the way we can do that is, once we can get in tune with that physical feeling in our body, we ask ourselves, how long have I been feeling this? Has it been here for a day, a week, month, a year, 10 years? Does it go all the way back to my early years? How long have I been feeling this? And we sit with it and we keep asking and we keep trying to figure out, how long has this been here? We start to engage and relate with the physical feeling in our body. And then once we figure out where this comes from, we ask ourselves, what were the things that I really needed when I was feeling this? Once we start to understand the things that I needed, then we start to cultivate that, and we've tried to get those things now in ways that are different from the ways that we would normally do it. The ways that we normally would do it would be our default adaptation response. Make ourselves small, stuff our emotions down, be agreeable, be a people pleaser, all of these things. So what we do is we start to make choices. We start to see the pain. We see the way that we react and respond to the pain. We see our patterns. And once we can sit with those and connect and relate with them and identify when they're coming up, we start to make choices. On the one hand, I can continue that same pattern. Now I'm aware of it. I know this pattern's here. I know this is what I'm going to do. It's happening right now. I can continue to do the same thing. That is a choice. Or I can do something new. And the new thing is going to be a practice. We're going to have to develop this and figure it out. Okay, I'm getting activated right now. I'm going to stop. Whatever I'm going to do, and I'm going to take 5 minutes to myself. I'm going to turn my attention into that feeling that's in my body, that activation. And I'm going to just try to relax. I'm just going to try to sit with it. I'm not going to go on my phone. I'm not going to go and scroll on the internet. I'm not going to go and immerse myself into work. I'm not going to go and try to please other people to make myself feel better. I'm going to sit with this feeling and try my best to be present with it and try to understand what this thing needs. This is a new choice. This is something that we might not have learned early in life, and that's a new option. And this is just one of many. The goal here is to get to the point where we can start to make choices.